The topic of India has come up again. Reuters reported that they stopped buying Russian oil, but the Economic Times of India say they haven't stopped. Inside Russia, dissatisfaction is growing due to inflation, sanctions, and increased customs duties. Drones flying in from Ukraine don't bring any joy either. Any actions by Trump immediately provoke a strong reaction almost all over the world, maybe only not in Africa. There are always questions about whether the Democrat will really be imprisoned. The dismissal of the director of the United States Bureau of Labor Statistics became news. Practically, again, all over the world. We will figure this out, of course. Hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants are leaving the United States of America. In Los Angeles, for example, the emergency rooms in hospitals have become empty. They've found about 12 or 13 children who were brought from Mexico and sold to work in the marijuana fields there. The leftists turned their backs to protect the owners of these plantations. But Europe has always been fighting against the Jews. Germany used to lead in this fight, but now France is starting to take the lead. Almost every day people write to me saying they'll talk and nothing else will happen. And Trump claims that he plans to put every single one of them in jail. How do I know this? Well, here's how.
But now today he says that until this happens, nothing will change. He wants to see James Comey, John Brennan, Klepper, McCabe, Hillary Clinton, and Obama. He says these people should go to jail.
The President of the United States said that during his previous term he didn't prosecute Hillary and he deeply regrets it. He also recently posted, well, let's say an artificial intelligence-generated video showing Obama being arrested right in front of him in the Oval Office. And now he has expanded the list of people he would like to see behind bars to include everyone mentioned in the documents discovered by Tulsi Gabbard. By the way, here is the opinion of Make America Great Again movement activists, as stated by one of the leading Republicans in the state of Utah.
The amount of information that has come in over the past few weeks. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, comes out and simply says that the level of corruption has reached the very top. And I'm with you 100%. I mean, there has to be accountability. That's what brought President Trump into office. This amazing, charismatic leader who cares about ordinary Americans and wants to bring accountability back to the government to remove the swamp creature from the establishment. I was proud of that when I received his endorsement during my campaign for the United States Senate last year. I'm proud to serve in his administration today in the Small Business Administration and to work on removing all regulations. But that's exactly right. We need accountability. These people need to serve their time so that CRE can simply restore trust. I'm sure you've seen a lot of data polls recently that just show that faith and trust in institutions here in America are at an all-time low. Stephen, and I think that's the reason, because we have rules for you, but not for me. And then even worse, we see the politicization and use of the Department of Justice and other federal agencies as weapons against, as they clearly did, President Trump.
Yes, I was shocked. I said, okay, I think they're going to drag Obama through the mud. I think they're going to humiliate him, try to ruin his impeccable presidential reputation. I think all of this will happen, but later, one of America's leading lawyers, David Shewan, he stated this week, I don't know if Obama can be charged with treason, but he can definitely be charged with conspiracy to commit insurrection, especially if he did anything after leaving office, then he could be impeached and prosecuted.
People really don't trust government agencies anymore, neither the FBI nor the CIA. Was there ever such an attitude toward them? If they said it, then that's how it was. Today, if they said it, it means the exact opposite. Congress and the Senate have extremely low approval ratings, indicating a lack of public trust. But I myself, to officials, politicians, so to speak, in general, they're called the Washington Swamp. They have lied for so long and so much that without a major change in the way the country is governed, trust in them will not return. And the first thing that must happen is that those who committed crimes, whoever they are, must be held accountable and punished.
I don't know if I will wait. I don't know if we will actually catch him, but I believe they can catch John Brennan, James Clapper, James Comey, even Hillary Clinton. It's finally time to open the investigation that James Comey refused to conduct when he tried to rig the election against Donald Trump. I think it would be helpful for Americans to see some of these people behind bars. You know, they talk about Obama might avoid this because of presidential immunity, but that presidential immunity only applies when you act within the scope of your presidential duties. Right. Betraying the country, trying to overturn the election, overthrowing the government. That's not part of the president's duties, right? We were all outraged that Joe Biden, as president, betrayed his oath by allowing the United States of America to be overrun by illegal immigrants. How is that different from what Barack Obama did, conspiring with American intelligence agencies to literally overthrow the government that was legitimately elected in a real election that Donald won?
His main point is this. This is a list of criminal actions. These are criminal actions. And I've been saying for over a year now that if we don't do anything now, if we don't respond with indictments, if we don't respond with grand juries, if we don't respond with prosecutions, they will do it again. They will do it again next time. Whether it's jurist Dr. Vance or Tulsi, whoever it is, whoever runs again from the Republicans, it will all happen again if there is no response. And yes, I've been through quite a lot of this. This really confirms many of the reports that are out there, which is very interesting. There are some cracks that seem to matter and are now coming to the forefront. Things we've seen in the past are now really being brought to light because of this release. But Benny, when you put all this together, it's a list of criminal actions. And we don't have the proper terminology for this yet because things like this haven't happened before in American history. But really, conspiracy to commit insurrection, I think that's the only way you can call it. Because look, people need to remember how this was supposed to work. Hillary Clinton, quote, was supposed to win the election. This was never supposed to be subjected to any kind of scrutiny.
Documents.
We stayed.
We find them in bags prepared for burning, stored in some kind of archive rooms. Only because they were sure that the Democrats were untouchable and that they would win, and that there would be no Trump at all, did they become careless. First, they convince us that everything Trump proposes leads to disaster. And it's authoritative scientists, experts, journalists, and industry professionals who say this.
So we move on to how we perceive this. Let me sum up what the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, and the New York Times said in March and now. In March, they said that by summer we would have a trade war, that tariffs have never worked, never will work, and that they would crash the international economy. They said that our immigration policy would deprive us of key workers and that Donald Trump's exceptional immigration policy would harm the economy. They said that uncertainty caused an almost record drop in the Dow Jones and Standard & Poor's indexes and that the situation would only get worse. The result, a recession by August.
That is, all the mouthpieces of liberal America were confidently predicting the complete collapse of the United States economy, and with it, Donald Trump.
It's August now, so they're saying, my fault, my great fault, we were wrong. No. They say, well, this May surplus is just an exception, and it's not really happening because more money comes in during May. When the end of the year approaches, large deficits start to appear.
That is, they don't admit that they were wrong about almost everything, but instead claim that they were right. And something terrible is bound to happen, but due to various circumstances, it hasn't happened yet.
Maybe. But why not just say May? It's not exactly telling, but it hasn't happened for 8 years, right? They didn't say that. And when they looked at the gross domestic product, they said, well, 3%, but that's because Donald Trump scared off importers and we're exporting more. Isn't that good for us? In other words, they were saying your gross domestic product is 3%, and that's because you're wrong. Ways to reach a trade deficit of $1 trillion. So I could go on, but you understand that all the good news is from these mainstream media, and I have to say, by the way, it's the Democratic Party. Chuck Schumer said the numbers were faked, even though these were impartial institutions. And we had representatives who came and said they were fake because they had no answer to it. But my point is that even the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, or especially the New York Times tried to explain away the good news, saying we'll really never have another month like May in terms of surplus, and the gross domestic product is just distorted because of tariffs. Unemployment will get worse because we're deporting people, and the inflation rate will skyrocket. Because all these countries will raise their prices. If they raise their prices, they'll lose the United States market. That's Mr. Wall Street Journal, the economics guru. The reason we have 2.7, which has grown a bit and hasn't reached what you told us, because they know there's a magic number they can't exceed in prices. Otherwise, you won't buy a Mercedes, or you won't buy a Lexus, or you won't buy an imported computer if the price gets too high. And we don't know what their profit margin is. But as I said 100 times, it was somewhere around 15, 20, 25%. So when you imposed a 15% tariff, they got angry. They then told themselves two things. Who are they? The Chinese, Japanese, South Koreans, and Europeans expressed surprise and concern upon arriving. The European Union had trade surpluses of $250 billion. So at least Trump didn't say, you guys have to give us back the 3 billion millions of dollars that we took from you, and we really did take them. And number two, we will complain and cry. But in reality, we make 20-25% on this huge market, which makes up a significant part of our exports. And if we have to pay 15%, we'll tell everyone that this will cause a trade war. We'll go bankrupt, but we'll still be making money without raising our prices.
I think Victor Kenson explained the situation, but I'll add that the Democratic Party is losing. Nothing they said is happening. The world isn't falling apart. The people aren't rising up. Well, against the Republicans, against Trump, yes, that's why they're just vaguely scaring people, saying, not now, but later it will definitely happen and it will be very bad. And at the same time, they're also trying to make things worse. By the way, here's a story that everyone is talking about today. Trump fired the director of the Bureau of Labor Statistics. What are the leftists saying? So the director gave numbers in the report that Trump didn't like, and he fired her because she didn't want to deceive us. Well, gentlemen, that means all the brainwashed people immediately have a reaction. That's what we thought. This monster Trump is going to ruin us. Well, it's us after all. We don't react like dogs to a whistle. We think, or at least we should think. So let's think about it. What kind of organization is this? The Bureau of Labor Statistics, that is, employment statistics. Let's put it that way. Yes, it collects information about statistics on people working in America. Its reports serve as indicators of the health of the American economy. But in recent years, well, something strange has been happening. The Bureau publishes a report. Then 2, 3, 4 weeks later, and sometimes even sooner, after some time, they publish a revision. So why publish the first report if you have to issue a revision afterward? So if they, let's say, made a mistake by 0.5% or even 1.5%, it doesn't have any impact. But if it's 20, 30, or even 50% errors or revisions, but that fundamentally changes the picture, and people who draw conclusions and act based on this typo can lose a lot more money. For example, with stocks, they invested in something thinking everything is fine, it's safe to invest. Boom. The population might vote, for example, for someone who seemed to deliver great results, and after the election it suddenly turns out that, well, let's say the person they voted for actually ruined the economy instead of delivering great results. For example, right before the election last November, a report suddenly showed that under Biden and Hillary, under Biden and Harris, jobs were created. A lot of jobs were created. They just appeared as if out of thin air, out of the mist. That was supposed to really help Kamala, right? But thank God it didn't help. Because first of all, no one believed it, and secondly, there were so many stupid and vile things she did. That's it. And then, quietly, a clarification came. Literally a week or two later, when the elections were already over, the clarification came. Or now the Federal Reserve had to decide whether to lower the rate. It means paying less for a mortgage, paying less on loans, borrowing money on better terms, which really energizes the economy, so to speak. Yes, it gives the economy more energy. If hiring new workers has been very, let's say, intense over the past month, then yes. Then there's no need to stimulate the economy because that could lead to inflation. And what Trump's economy needs right now is for this rate to go down. So right before the Federal Reserve meeting, when they're supposed to make a decision, some very high statistics come out. So the Reserve doesn't lower the interest rates. And the next day, a clarification comes out. Oh, new data came in, we made a small mistake. Well, by about 50% or so. Do you think it was just a coincidence? Both times Trump did the right thing, of course, by firing that scumbag. He should have fired her even earlier, he just didn't get around to it. Well, let's think even deeper. By the way, in the United States, the number of jobs that increased was much less than expected. It caused an explosion like a bomb going off. Why? So it seemed that the economy was growing, everything was getting better. But it turns out that actually we suddenly find out if we study, if we are interested. If we are not interested, then we don't find out anything. That since March of this year, 1.7 million people, as they write, people not born in America, have left their jobs. Well, basically, undocumented immigrants, that's it. And where did they go? They went back there, scared. Some of them have already left. So, but what about that? During the same period, 1.2 million United States citizens found jobs. In my opinion, that's precisely what we were attempting to accomplish. So that illegal immigrants would leave their jobs, free up positions, and Americans would take those jobs.
Gross domestic product soared to a record 3%, much higher than expected. And the proof that the American economy is growing is that it's growing twice as fast as it did under Biden, which the Fed then used as proof of why they can't cut rates, as they said. They said the economy is too resilient, growing too fast. Well, that optimism turned out to be very wrong. The next day, a day after the Fed announces that rates will stay the same, that they won't cut rates, what happens? The Department of Labor releases this stunning jobs report showing that only 73,000 jobs were created last month in July, which is significantly below the estimate of 104,000, and that wasn't even the climax. They also updated the job numbers for May and June, revising them down significantly by 258,000 jobs. That's less than previously reported, saying that there was virtually no job growth in May and June. The recent revisions to job data were the most significant in years, demonstrating the importance of this update.
Which means that 2 months ago they showed us the numbers and now suddenly, oh, we've just found out that things aren't like that at all. Guys, you know how to work, but you need to know how to count numbers. You're statisticians, mathematicians from the statistics department. Read the numbers. No one is asking you to unload train cars, are they? Or maybe whatever the party says, that's what we do.
When you look beyond the main numbers and consider how or why those numbers were revised downward, the reason becomes so clear, so obvious. The Bureau of Labor Statistics says that only 73,000 jobs were created last month. Well, how many Americans got a job last month? 383,000. Yes, the total number of Americans who were added to the workforce who found a new job was a record-breaking, staggering 383,000. Let me explain.
The Bureau calculates the difference. There were 100 employees. Now there are 110 employees, so 10 jobs have been added. And inside the report, there's something hidden that RJ will tell us about now.
So, how is it possible that only 73,000 jobs were created when a staggering 467,000 foreign immigrant workers lost their jobs? Let me repeat that. Last month in July, nearly 500,000 foreign-born workers left the workforce, lost their jobs. Here's the reason. This is what the Trump administration has to deal with in the press. Thursday's employment report was a direct result of the purge of illegal immigrants from our labor market, which Trump promised to do. And this can be seen in the data in the latest jobs report. This is happening. If you're a Trump supporter, that's a good thing. Not in a harsh way or anything like that. I mean it seriously. Most of these foreign workers who just lost their jobs are employed in the construction industry. These are construction jobs for workers that are well paid and now opening up for Americans. 383,000 Americans have just replaced 467,000 illegal immigrants in the workforce. That's the point.
So, if you don't analyze it, it seems like something terrible is happening, right? It's a nightmare, yeah, we lost, didn't get enough, what should we do? It's terrible, yeah. But if you think about it, the undocumented workers lost their jobs and went home, and Americans took their place. Americans who were receiving benefits. Free health care at our expense, social benefits paid for by those who work. And now they won't be taking from the common pot, but by working themselves, they'll be adding to it, which is good for America. That's exactly what Trump was aiming for. But there's another very interesting consequence of illegal immigrants leaving. My close friend spent 7 hours in the emergency room at the hospital recently. He was waiting because the place was packed with people who didn't speak English. Now listen to what's happening.
We've seen this in Colorado and all across the country. For weeks, we've seen it in Colorado, Illinois, Chicago, Los Angeles. This is a fundamental struggle, friends, for both sides. We know why the Democrats are fighting so hard for this. Take Los Angeles, for example. They risk losing a third of their population. A third of the residents are here illegally. The number of residents affects a lot of things, including the distribution of seats in Congress. This is a serious matter. And why are the Dems probably panicking? Because Trump's immigration policy is working. These jurisdictions are witnessing an exodus, a serious exodus of self-deportations. Yesterday, this public service announcement went viral from a nurse in the emergency department in Los Angeles. Look at what she said, stating that because of immigration and customs enforcement raids and all the illegals who recently left the city, hospitals in Los Angeles are practically empty. Empty! Look.
I just finished my 12-hour shift at one of the busiest hospitals in Los Angeles County. And guys, our emergency room is just empty. At most, we have about 4 patients every hour. And as much as a healthcare worker might like a quiet day, it's actually pretty scary. It's unfortunate that many patients are afraid to seek medical help in the current circumstances. The situation is truly disheartening. And it just scares me because of the consequences. Because many patients will delay seeking medical help and come back 10 times worse. Our hospitals should be safe places, and we are here to protect our patients and care for them, no matter who they are, or where they come from.
So, in hospitals, the waiting time has decreased, and Americans now have more time with doctors and nurses. Secondly, school class sizes have decreased. Thirdly and fourthly, but there's something I want to say to that nurse who unfortunately won't hear me, but maybe others will. It's very commendable that you treat those who paid for their insurance as you do. Crossing the border illegally and immediately going to the hospital are not equivalent situations. You're a professional. A person comes to you for treatment, you treat them. But there's a problem. You take care of illegals at my expense. Your time is paid for, the doctors are paid, the electricity is paid, the medicine is paid, the equipment is paid for by someone. Who is that? And this? I pay for that, dear. So every time an illegal comes in, I won't pay you extra for your time anymore. Be kind on your own dime. Be kind on your own dime, please. Otherwise, you're being kind, but I'm the one paying for it. What's so heroic about what you're doing? It's that you said, I don't care if they're paying me for him or for someone else. I'll take them all anyway because I'm getting paid for both. Or were you just in such a good mood that you said that? Leon will pay as much money as we want because he won't find out anyway, and we'll take some extra money from him because the illegals came. Ha ha ha! Next time someone comes to you who hasn't been paid for by me, please ask me first if I'm willing to pay for them or not. And if I say no, then you pay all the expenses for his service and treatment. And everyone who happily gives my money to illegal immigrants. If you do that, then you'll have the right to open your mouth if you pay for him yourself. These are kind of our local California news, but they're shocking. When the Democrats finally allowed non-ideological programmers to check the voter lists in California, they found not 10,000 extra, not 100,000 extra, but 3.1 million names that had no right to vote. In other words, extra people. A total of 21.3 million of these so-called dead souls were found across the United States. Remarkably, in California, there were 22 million voters on the registry, and 15% of them turned out to be fake. Across the United States, out of 153 million registered voters, it's the same 15%. Either they haven't been cleaned up and are still there, or they're fake, meaning they were added there.
Were added or
Were deliberately left and not removed, and so on. Of course, we don't know whether these dead souls were used in the last elections or not, but analysts claim that there is a possible, so to speak, shift to the right in California. After this cleanup, that's what is meant. That is, they think that the dead souls voted for the Democrats. It's not very clear why Macron had to announce right now that the Jordanian left bankers have the right to their own state, and that this state should be located on the territory of Judea and Samaria. Editor, so on the territory of Israel? It's also unclear who will support this state. It can't exist on its own, and how will Israel's security be ensured? Knowing that every time Hamas, PILO, and other terrorist organizations receive money and freedom, they prepare to kill Jews. Instead of preparing a good life for their people, for their fellow citizens. Incredible amounts of resources, absolutely incredible resources, were spent on underground structures created with one goal: to kill as many Jews as possible. And the world knew, and others even provided resources to achieve this important goal. The Egyptians failed, Rome couldn't do it, the Persians didn't finish the job, and the Germans broke down along the way. And now the Islamists, mostly Arabs, have raised the banner of the effort to poisonously erase the Jewish tribe from the face of the earth. They are supported by 147 countries and 193 members of the United Nations. Now France, Canada, the United Kingdom, and Portugal have announced their readiness to recognize the State of Palestine at the United Nations General Assembly session in September 2024. In other words, they are ready to resume funding preparations for the destruction of, well, those 6 million
Jews.
For the destruction, then, of those who returned to their homeland after approximately 2,000 years of exile. This is the only case when a group of people united by ethnic and religious ties did not dissolve after 3 or 4 generations in the diaspora. This is the first case in history when a people returned to their land after the last person exiled from it has long since died. Some call it a miracle. Others say that the very fact of the survival of the Jews is a miracle. They call it a miracle that all the Torah scrolls are the same all over the world, after thousands of years of being copied. They match exactly, down to the letter, with each other and with the ones that archaeologists find today in the territory of Israel. Yes, so it's a miracle. By the way, the fact that 0.02% of the world's population produced 40% of Nobel laureates in science, and that any country that expelled the Jews loses its power and wealth. There's something strange going on with these Jews that for some reason causes a furious hatred, illogical, inexplicable, but hatred from the masses. And it doesn't matter if they're educated, the masses, even titled or not. Macron should be warned that the last Jews are already leaving France. What does it mean the gates are opening? And it's already visible right there on the threshold. These are multi-million hordes of Islamists, already hordes, turning Europe into a broken trough. It's a pity, old lady Europe. Yes, it's a pity, but at the same time, it's not. The old world is wonderful for tourism, but it has outlived itself, and as always, it's being taken over by barbarians, just as it has always happened in 6,000 years of our human history. In the New World, it's urgent to separate the viable provinces from the Europeanized impotence. Let's say I'm talking about Canada, and what is viable should be joined to the United States of America. Then maybe the rest of the Canadian provinces, the states, will snap out of their shock. Although it might already be too late for them. And the United States needs to be brought, ladies and gentlemen, to combat readiness. The second half of the 21st century unfortunately promises to be very interesting. But I think we don't need to exaggerate. The United States of America will endure. The United States of America will stand strong. The United States of America. This is what starts a completely new life, a completely new civilization, I would even say, on planet Earth.